The message arrived late on a Thursday evening. 3 words on a glowing screen. Sure, that works. Those same 3 words from a different person or on a different day might have felt easygoing, even supportive. But tonight, after a week of tense silences, they landed like a small door closing. So here is the mystery. The letters on the screen did not change, yet the meaning twisted sharply within seconds. Her brain had done something before she even became aware of it, filtering the message through a hidden layer of expectation. This time she read it and smiled, because the words felt light and agreeable. The pixels were identical, but the interpretation had flipped from hostile to kind. The obvious answer is that mood colors everything we read, and that explanation is partly true. Yet beneath that single mood swing lies a far larger system of invisible filters that shape every waking moment. At any moment, your senses are flooded with more light, sound, and sensation than you could ever fully process. If you tried to notice everything around you right now, you would be paralyzed before you could take a single step. So the brain, long before conscious thought, makes a radical choice about what to keep and what to discard. In one famous experiment, researchers asked people to watch a basketball video and count the number of passes. While they focused on the counting, a person in a gorilla suit walked slowly through the center of the scene. Afterward, when asked if they saw anything unusual, roughly half of the participants said no. Their expectation about what mattered had created a filter so strong that a gorilla became invisible. This same selective attention operates every time you walk through a noisy room and hear only one conversation. But attention is only the first filter, because even the information that gets through must be interpreted. The brain never receives raw, unfiltered reality. It receives signals that it must rapidly match to past experience. When she read, "Sure, that works," her schema of the relationship as strained filled in the gaps with coldness. A different schema, one based on trust and shared humor, would have filled the same gaps with warmth. Schemas act as invisible editors, trimming away whatever does not fit the story you already expect. They save energy and speed up understanding, but they also make you vulnerable to a powerful distortion. Once a schema is active, it tends to feed itself by searching for information that confirms its shape. That process has a name: confirmation bias, the human tendency to notice, remember, and favor evidence that supports what we already believe. Every short reply she finds now seems like part of a pattern, while the long, warm replies fade from memory. The filter does not just select what she sees, it actively builds a case that the first interpretation was correct. At this point, the challenge becomes even stranger, because the filter begins to shape her behavior, not just her perception. She responds to the friend with short, guarded messages, which then prompts the friend to become more distant in return. The original filter, born from a tense week, now creates the very coldness it expected to find. This is not a story about one person's mistake. It is a general principle that psychologists call belief perseverance. In a classic demonstration, researchers gave volunteers a test and then provided them with completely fake scores. Even after the volunteers learned that the scores were invented, many still believed the false assessment of their ability. The initial filter, once planted, continued to shape their self-view long after its foundation was removed. Belief perseverance shows that our mental filters are not passive screens. They are active builders that resist demolition. Understanding this requires looking at how the brain uses prediction, not just reaction, to navigate the world. Every moment, your brain generates predictions about what will happen next based on your accumulated past. When a prediction is strong, the actual input from your senses is weighed against the prediction and sometimes overruled. If you expect a bitter taste, the same juice can taste less sweet, not because of the juice, but because of the top-down expectation. This is not a design flaw. It is the brain's way of making sense of ambiguity at high speed. Without such filtering, every encounter would be disorienting, every sentence a puzzle without a frame. The cost, however, is that we can mistake our filtered construction for an accurate recording of what actually happened. So the invisible filters, while essential, create a version of reality that is personal, not universal. Two people can witness the same event, hear the same words, and walk away with conflicting memories that each feels certain about. Those differences are not evidence that one person is lying. They are evidence that different filters were active. Culture, upbringing, and recent experiences all tune the filters in particular directions without your awareness. Growing up in an environment where criticism was frequent may set the sensitivity for detecting hostility higher than average. A week of supportive interactions might temporarily lower that threshold, while a week of stress might raise it sharply. The filters, in other words, are not fixed traits. They fluctuate with your internal state and your recent history. This means that the same ambiguous message may be filtered through a different lens tomorrow morning. Recognizing this fluctuation is the first step toward loosening the grip of a single, painful interpretation. But recognition alone does not dismantle the filter, because the filter operates several steps before conscious reasoning. Question then becomes, if filters are automatic and invisible, is it possible to see them at all? Here we return to the woman and her phone, still holding the same 3 words from a week of misunderstanding. The rush of hurt she felt was not a choice. It arrived before she could decide how to interpret it. But after the initial wave, she did something small that altered the entire trajectory of the conversation. She did not delete the message or fire back a defensive reply, at least not right away. Instead, she put the phone face down on the table and took one deliberate breath. In that pause, she created a sliver of space between the automatic filter and her next action. That space is where the most important psychological discovery of this whole process hides. The filters themselves may be automatic, but the awareness of their presence is not automatic at all. Awareness is a skill that can be strengthened by repeatedly asking one question: what else could this mean? She looked at the words again and consciously considered alternative explanations. Maybe the friend was exhausted. Maybe the reply was rushed between tasks. Maybe the tone was truly neutral. The letters did not change, but the act of questioning loosened the clamp of the first filter. Psychologists call this metacognition, which simply means thinking about your own thinking. Metacognition does not erase the filter, but it allows you to see it as a lens rather than a truth. This is the turning point in the entire story of invisible filters, and it changes everything that follows. Until now, we have described filters as obstacles, as sources of error and misunderstanding. But the deeper insight is that a filter is not an enemy. It is the mind's basic method for making meaning. The same schema that distorted her friend's message also helps her read these words and link them into a coherent idea. Without schemas, you would face an endless stream of disconnected dots, utterly unable to understand anything. The real danger is not that we have filters, but that we forget we are using them. When we forget, we treat our filtered view as the complete and final truth, and we act on it without pause. That is the climax of this journey. The invisible filter becomes harmful only when it is invisible to you. Once you can see the filter, even dimly, you gain the ability to hold your interpretation lightly. You can say to yourself, I notice I am reading this message as hostile, but I might be reading it through the dust of a hard week. This is not self-doubt. It is self-awareness, and it is the foundation of more accurate perception. She picked up the phone again and typed a reply that began with a question instead of an accusation. Instead of, "Why are you so short with me?" she wrote, "Everything okay? Just checking in." That single shift from assuming a motive to checking a possibility changed the entire exchange. The friend replied almost immediately, "Sorry, so busy today, but yes, all good, thanks for checking." The tension that had built up over the original misreading began to dissolve, not because the words changed, but because the filter was adjusted. This outcome does not mean that filters can be switched off, or that one calm pause will always fix a misunderstanding. The brain will keep filtering because it must, and sometimes the filter will still get it wrong. But every time you practice that small pause and ask what else might be true, the skill grows stronger. The woman in this story is not a perfect example. She is an every person who discovered that reality is partly constructed. The phrase, "sure, that works," was never inherently good or bad. Its meaning was a collaboration between the message and her mind. Most of that collaboration happens in the dark, in the milliseconds before you consciously arrive at an emotion. Yet the light of awareness, applied gently and repeatedly, can illuminate the edges of those hidden processes. So the next time a message stings or a tone feels off, you might remember that your own history is part of what you are hearing. The filters that shape your reality are invisible, but they are not invisible to someone who looks for them. And looking for them with curiosity and patience is the beginning of seeing more clearly.